more and more connected. So we, as a human species, we began off in little tribal groups, and each group, might have a dozen, 100 people, maybe maximum. But then as we started to come together as civilization evolved, we formed cities, we learned to write, then we got the printing press, and then we were using new technologies like the telegraph, the telephone, radio, television. All of these technologies have brought us closer and closer together through improved communication. Well, along came the internet, and it was a huge exponential leap forward, literally changed every business on the planet. So what comes next in terms of mass connectivity? That is the question I ask in the book. And I see a couple things developing that will be really big game changers. Number one is brain operating system. By this, I mean brain-computer interfaces. So these are devices out there right now that allow people to interface directly with their brain to the internet. Now, it seems like science fiction, but a lot of you might have heard Elon Musk announcing his brain chips. They aren't out yet, even though he said they would be. He's always a little optimistic about these things. But a number of companies are producing chips that will be put into people's brains. Now, most of us won't want chips, at least right away. But there is, for medical reasons, for medical purposes, there's huge potential with these chips. So at Brown University, for example, they are experimenting with chips in people's brains, and these people are completely paralyzed. They have locked-in syndrome. However, the chip in their brain allows them to communicate. They can actually send text messages just by thinking. They can control robotic arms. They can drive around in a wheelchair. So it's a life changer for people with certain conditions. Now, you can go on Amazon today, and for a couple $100, you can buy a Muse EEG brain headband. And basically a band you wear around your head. It's not a chip. You just put it on like a sweatband around your forehead. And what it does is it measures your brain waves, and it's really good for things like meditation, giving you basically biofeedback from your brain about the state of your brain and whether you're concentrating, whether you're relaxed, things like that. These EEG headsets do really well. But they really, beyond that, they can't do much. However, we will be getting the technology, and there's a lot of people putting money into this, including DARPA that funded the internet. They are funding non-invasive brain-computer interfaces because they believe that this technology will be transformative. And if you think about it, it will be. Not just on the battlefield where you're wearing smart helmets and you're able to communicate by thinking, but literally, it will, if this works, and at some point it will, it's inevitable that we will be able to do this. If this works, we won't have cell phones. So we won't need cell phones. Our brains will literally be able to access the internet and download information, send messages, do whatever we want by thinking. Now we'll need a totally different operating system. So away will go Android and iOS, and some company or companies will come up with a brain operating system that will interface with our brain. And it'll have to be very unique, like nothing we've ever seen before. Now, the precursors to this really exist. So if you go into the real world right now, you can see at University California, UC San Francisco, they did experiments where they were literally able, with a non-invasive device, to take out language from somebody's brain to figure out what they were saying. At the University of Toronto, with advanced EEG headsets, they were able to pull images from people's brain, literally what they were seeing in their head, and visualize it on the screen, on a computer screen. So this is pretty groundbreaking. I mean, we can do this now in the laboratory. It's a matter of time, maybe a decade or more, but before we can commercialize it and take it mass market. So when we can take this mass market, we will be able to very seamlessly download content from the internet. We will also potentially be able to communicate with other people's brains directly, brain to brain. And they've done experiments with this at Duke University, which were absolutely amazing. They call it the BrainNet. and they wired 3 monkeys together and gave them each a 2D view of a 3D space. And they were rewarded every time they could navigate a cursor in 3D to the right location, a little dot on the screen to the right location in 3D, but each monkey could only see 2D. However, the monkeys working together, their brains wired together, automatically did it. They automatically figured it out, and they could do it in no time. They could guide this cursor around. They became really, really good at it. And that just shows you that even the monkeys weren't conscious of doing this. That's what they think. It was, they were conscious of their 2D view, but because the brains were wired together, they were a single brain. Now, so think about that when we're wired together, what that means to be a single brain. They've done other experiments where they had 2 rats in 2 different rooms in 2 different cities. They were in cages. One rat with a brain, both rats had chips in their brain. When one saw a light flash, it could press a button and get food. Instantly, the other rat in the other location could do the same thing and learn how to get the food. Even though no light flash, there was no signal, it knew when to get the food. Now, what this shows you is that through the internet, we can transfer information from one living brain to another. Think about that when it's available to all of us. And literally, it could be available tomorrow if we have chips in our brain. But we're not going to get chips. But with a non-invasive device like a headset or something we wear or something behind our ear, when this is available, it'll be a game changer. And that's why companies like Facebook are actually investing in this heavily. So, and I know other companies are investing in this, lots of big companies. Some I'm under NDA with, so I can't tell you, but I've consulted with them. This technology is coming. The other big thing for mass connectivity is sensory sharing. And the metaverse. So all of us in the future will be, and actually Facebook again, Mark Zuckerberg's very aggressive on these things. He just announced that in the EU, they're going to create 10,000 jobs just to work on the metaverse. So that's his commitment. And you're going to hear more and more about the metaverse in the coming year. It's going to be a big topic. I write about it in my book because what is coming is a digital reality intertwined with our physical reality. So we call this today mixed reality or augmented reality. There's also virtual reality where you're in a completely virtual world, but we're going to be blending our day-to-day activities that we do without devices with a digital reality overlaid on top of it, or many digital realities. And I call this, multimodal. So we're going to be multimodal. We're going to jump from different reality to different reality, different digital landscapes that we paint around us. And if you combine this technology with brain-computer interfaces, you get a whole new type of interface, a whole new type of user experience that will define the next generation of how we connect with the internet, how we connect with the metaverse. I'll go on to force number 2. And that is bioconvergence. So bioconvergence is the convergence of biology and technology. And the biggest example of bioconvergence today that we see is in the area of CRISPR gene editing and genomics. So right now, we have discovered and decoded the source code for all living organisms on this planet. And that is, if you think about it as the source code, it's absolutely amazing because using tools like CRISPR, which are still pretty primitive, but being improved every single day, using these tools, we can literally rewrite genetic code and we can create new species of plants and animals that never existed before. Now, what does this mean for our lives? What is going to happen? Well, first of all, there are startups using this technology. So there's a company called Aqua Bounty, and they actually gene edited salmon. And they were the first ones to really gene edit a fish like this to make the salmon grow twice as fast. So these new salmon that grow twice as fast, that means that they can be twice as profitable, right? Because, time is money. When you're feeding these salmons, when you're farming these salmons, time is money. And they can bring them to market much faster. And that is just the beginning. At the University of Florida, they've gene edited cattle so that they can survive in higher temperatures. Now, why would they do this? They would do it because of climate change. Well, we're going to be experiencing more severe temperature changes. And so we're going to be gene editing our livestock to deal with that, so they don't all die out in extreme heat. We are also, as you know, there's GMO, which is different, genetically modified organisms, which we've been doing it with crops. Monsanto has been doing for decades. Starting kind of the first big one was the flavor saver tomato, but that is actually, it's a little different. So there are two types of technologies. One where you combine genes from different species of organisms together to create something new, and another one like pest-resistant crops, for example, and another one where you simply edit out genes. So what the company Aqua Bounty did was they literally just snipped out genes, and that can be much, people could consider that much safer, although we don't know. Like, we don't know right now with all these technologies what the long-term repercussions are, but we are experimenting on the human race, whether you like it or not. We're doing that. Business is moving forward. So you will see this gene editing technology come into play in other areas too. One is our health. So we now have companies with gene therapies that are looking to extend human life to make people live healthier. And there are a bunch of them out there that are in trials on this. They're also working on curing cancers with gene therapy, and they've had successes. And they've even cured congenital blindness with gene therapy. So people are born with this, with genes where they can see when they're young, but as soon as they start to hit puberty, they go blind. It's a horrible disease. But Sparks Therapeutics has actually patented gene therapy for curing blindness. Now, there's a big controversy because they are charging a lot of money for this technology, enough so that a family without health insurance could never afford it. And even with health insurance, it's extremely expensive. So the question is, how do we distribute this technology equitably? How much should there be a limit on what businesses charge, or should they be able to charge whatever the market demands? But if you're a parent and your kid is going blind, well, most parents would sacrifice everything if they love their children, right? So it's a different type of market, and we have to think about this. And then there's other areas that are coming into use in gene therapy. And one of them is gene drives, where you can literally edit the genes of a species and have that propagated as they breed. So for example, they have been debating whether to use gene drives to wipe out the rat population, which is an invasive species killing off all the birds in New Zealand. And there are pros and cons to this. All the birds are being wiped out, all these endangered birds, by these rats, they're invasive. But as soon as you breed the rats to die out, what if one of those rats jumps on a ship, or some of them jump on ships and head to Australia, and then from Australia head to the rest of the world? Would we literally wipe out rats across the planet? Maybe some people would be happy. Other people would consider that a crime. So there are pluses and minuses. We're doing the same thing now with mosquitoes. So they're running experiments. So this is pretty amazing, far-reaching technology, and I'm really just scratching the surface. In the book, I go much deeper on this. I also go much deeper on biohacking, putting chips and other technology into our bodies, and what that means in the future, how our bodies will be, how we basically are going to be merging with our machines. That will happen. That is a trend that's already started. We can see it, and brain-computer interfaces and chip implants are just the beginning. So human expansionism. Now, this is an area that gets a lot of hype that we've all been hearing about, with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, all the billionaire boys putting their money into taking us into outer space for tourism, for colonization, for exploration. And this space industry is going to continue to grow. So it's a huge ecosystem right now. You guys are in M&A. There'll probably be a lot more activity in this area. And there's a lot of potential. And there's a new space race going on between the US and China and Russia. So we're all racing to to stake our claim in outer space. And that will be a very interesting as it plays out. As if we don't have enough problems on Earth with the South China Sea and Taiwan and all these other issues in the Ukraine, we're now going to be we're probably going to be a little contentious over who gets to control the moon and Mars. So we'll see how that plays out on a geopolitical scale. In human expansionism, I talk not only about expanding outward, but expanding inward, down to the quantum level. So that, quantum computers are here. They're getting better. We've already reached quantum supremacy. That means quantum computers can do something no conventional computer can, much better, much faster. Quantum computers are going to be primarily used for very complex problems, such as chemistry problems at the molecular level. So they're very good. It's very hard to model molecules because there's so much data and so many possibilities on a conventional microprocessor-based computer. However, on a quantum computer, they are quantum, so they can actually deal with these extremely hard mathematical problems. And we're going to see quantum computers open up whole new vistas in the area of developing new materials that we've never seen before. Like right now, we have graphene and some other amazing materials that we've developed, but there are going to be many more of these materials in the pipeline as quantum computing matures. New cures for diseases that we have, new ways of understanding the cosmos and the Earth, all of these things are wide open. And then there's also nanotechnology. And I'm going a little fast because there's a lot in here. Nanotechnology, creating these tiny robots that will literally change the face of our planet, because these robots can be put into, let's say, the ocean to clean out plastics, toxic waste sites to remove toxins. They can be used for lots of different purposes. Scientists are even experimenting with injecting them into the human body so that they can target cancers. And they're working on that right now in the laboratory, where they can target tumors and kill tumors. So this is a wide open space. And we haven't even begun to really think deeply about the possibilities of where nanotechnology will take us. It's such a new technology. And I speculate in the book on the different areas where nanotechnology will lead us, but I won't go into more detail now. Deep automation is number 4. And this is something we hear about a lot. And deep automation is the process of automating everything we do. We've seen that using artificial intelligence and big data, we are literally automating every job we can and every part of every job. There's a huge amount of money being made here right now, and this is just accelerating. Now, there are issues that come up with AI that I discuss in the book. Some of these are privacy issues. So, as AI becomes better at processing massive amounts of data, and as we deploy billions upon billions of IoT devices around the globe, lots of these cameras, lots of these sensors, lots of these audio, we are being tracked. So we already know we're sort of entering or have already entered the post-privacy era. Our phones and all our data on our phones is being gathered. Now you can literally, if you go into parks, if you go into stores, if you go anywhere, there's probably CCTV cameras there taking your picture. And these are being hooked up to the internet and the cloud and AI to take that data and process it. And that data will probably be sold and used in various different ways. So we run into situations, which I discuss in the book, that are very interesting, that our society will have to contend with. And these are situations, for example, you walk into a store and they have AI now that can literally, an Israeli company developed this, they're deploying it now in India, that can literally detect if you are about to shoplift. So like Minority Report, you might not have shoplifted already, but because it sees pattern matching and it sees what you're doing, it can reliably predict that you will be stealing something. What does this mean for a store? Should the store intervene and usher you out before you steal something? Will somebody be tracking you, either a robot or a human, your entire time watching until you take that item? The good side is this could prevent shoplifting. The bad side is if it identifies you falsely, you may, based on certain data, and maybe the data is based on race or other characteristics, that it might be, you might, when you enter a store, feel like everybody's watching you, and they might actually be watching you. They are watching you. And there can be lots of issues that arise out of this that we as a society need to contend with. They're also using AI now in courtrooms. Literally, they're using AI to inform judges on whether or not they should grant parole. So certain, will a convicted criminal commit a crime again? Well, they're looking at the data, all the data, and they're coming up with an answer. Now, do we want AIs to literally be determining how long a person stays in jail? Is this, and whether a person ever gets out? Or do we want this to remain with humans? We know humans are faulty. We know we don't do that good a job at it. On the plus side, maybe AI will do a much better job. On the downside, maybe there will be injustice in this, and we don't know. Or are we giving too much power to our algorithms? So this all remains to be sorted out. I discuss this in detail in the book. And I also go into other issues, like AI will become so powerful and so seductive that we will invite it into our lives to make decisions. Now, I could see, anybody out there who has a job, even if they love the job, they may ask the AI, is there a better job out there for me? And the AI, because it can access massive amounts of data, they pay a little money and it'll go out and search everything so they don't have to search the sites and identify a job that would potentially be perfect for them. And then they, because they don't have all this data, would ask the AI, should I make the leap or should I stay at my current job? So we may be delegating really important life decisions, like should I switch jobs? Who should I date? AI will be playing a role in that based on data, what type of person, matchmaking, all of these big life events. We will more and more be delegating those decisions to artificial intelligence. Right now, we feel very comfortable delegating things like what movie should I watch, recommend a movie, things like that. Where should I eat? We have no problem. Find me a good restaurant. But there will become a point where AI can do almost everything better than us, almost everything. So there will be jobs and companies entirely run by AI in the future. Like the AI they just don't need humans in the loop. And there will be positions where people use AI, but they're doing very little. The AI is adding most of the value. So where does that leave human beings? Where does that leave us? That's another issue I go deep on in the book. And I'll stop there and go to the final chapter, the intelligence explosion. Now, this is where AI becomes not just as smart as us, but potentially even smarter than human beings. And there will be a point where AI can do this. We're still a long way off. So right now, what we have perfected with machine learning is very narrow AI. So for example, a self-driving car can be much better, not right yet, but soon enough, Elon Musk and the others will make it better at getting us from point A to point B without having an accident. So self-driving cars will be able to do this far better than human beings. But these self-driving cars, they have no idea about what the context of their reality they're in. They don't understand what human beings are. They don't understand what a city is. They only know how to get from point A to point B without getting in an accident. That is narrow AI. However, companies like OpenAI, which is working with Microsoft, they are claiming they are approaching AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which means an AI that can actually understand the world like a human being. So we will get to the point where we have these AIs. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but you never know. These technologies are advancing very fast, and we could have, we're going to, at a certain point, probably, I would guess, 2 decades out, but we'll see, we will have AGI. Now, that's in most of our lifetimes, right? So AGI is coming. What does it mean to have AGI? What does it mean to have machines that can interpret the world, act in the world in the way humans do, learn not only in the way humans do, but also in the way AI does. So they will be more capable than us by definition. These AIs will not, when they can do what we can do, they already can do other things much better. You combine those, becomes extremely powerful. Imagine we are building lifelike robots. Robots are getting more and more lifelike. In Japan, there's this one guy, Ishiguro, and he's built robots that literally, if you're standing across the room, you'd be hard pressed to know they're robots. Well, these robots will be hooked up to the cloud with advanced artificial intelligence in the future. And the question is, they will look and act like human beings. Do we treat them like human beings? At what point do we say they are conscious beings? What if they react in exactly the same way a human does, even to pain, because they're programmed that way? How would we be able to deny them their own free agency? So that question becomes a big question at a certain point. And we as a society will need to deal with this. Also, we will need to deal with what happens when these artificial intelligent beings suddenly decide to do things on their own, start making their own autonomous decisions. Now, these decisions may not be in line with what we want. How do we control them? How do we interact with them? What will society look like? Will we be accessing them through our brain-computer interfaces? Will they be influencing us in ways we don't know about? Who controls them? Like if you have a robot in your house that's very smart, it can be gathering data on you. It could be manipulating you by suggesting certain things. All of these questions are open questions that our society must deal with. And I bring them up in the book because I think all of these things we need to start talking about now. We need to open a dialogue on it now, because if we just let whatever happens with technology happen, we could find ourselves in a position where this technology is being abused, either by corporations, like you could imagine, Facebook hasn't been that responsible. What would they do with this technology? With governments, there are many governments in the world, which if they got a hold of this technology and they're going after it full force, they could use it to control their populations and essentially, brainwash them, or even if they had brain-computer interfaces, chips in their brains, literally control them. So this is coming, and I go even further in the book to envision a world where we have these super intelligences that are exponentially smarter than human beings. Now, the question a lot of people ask me is, would these ever be conscious? Would they have morals? The answer is, we don't know. We cannot know. So we are not them. All we can know is that we are conscious. If they act and behave like they are conscious beings, then we will have to treat them like that, because they will behave just like a conscious, intelligent being. That's what they will be, whether they are conscious in the same way as us or not. So that sums up my book, and I will stop here, and I will go back to open it up to a dialogue where we can discuss some of these issues.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Steve. So